Hello there and welcome to Unit 4, Ethics. We're going to start off this unit with something a little bit different, and I hope that you find it an effective method of instruction, okay? So this is Ethics and the introduction. Okay, are you an ethical person? Consider the following thought experiment. You are an honest student who works hard and gets decent grades. However, a friend of yours who is also in the class is struggling. In a moment of stress and panic, he decides to cheat on an essay by plagiarizing online content. You tell him he shouldn't do that, but he shrugs off your concerns and asks you not to say anything. Would you say something? Should you? Are your answers to these two questions different? I think this is an effective way to introduce ethics because, for one, it suggests that there's a difference between what you would do and what you should do. I want you to think hard about this issue. What we've raised here is a moral dilemma, a dilemma between integrity and loyalty. The thought experiment on the last page is a moral dilemma because it involves a conflict of values. On the one hand, we might value loyalty to our friend and can sympathize with his distress. But on the other hand, we might value fairness and understand that it is wrong to cheat. We think that there should be consequences for cheating. So how can we decide what the right thing to do is? In ethics, we need to make rational arguments in order to do so. So let's see the following page for an example. Here's an example of an argument that you could give about whistleblowing, which is really what this issue is about. So even though it is a difficult choice and might damage your friendship, if your friend will not reconsider or come clean, you should tell the teacher about his plagiarism. Loyalty to your friends is important, but not as important as speaking up against wrongdoing. Cheating is unfair to other students who complete their work. Furthermore, if students are allowed to get away with it, then it teaches them that cheating is an action that does not have bad consequences and is even necessary to get ahead in life. The cycle of cheating will continue unless people make hard choices and speak up against it. In the business world, this is called whistleblowing. Now, you may agree or disagree with this argument, but if so, why? As in all areas of philosophy and ethics, you always need to explain your point using reason. Now, it's really important to note this distinction. Ethics does not seek to describe how people do in fact act. That is best left to social sciences like sociology and psychology. Rather, the aim of the philosopher is to determine how one should act and to explain why using reason. In other words, ethics is prescriptive, not descriptive. There's another cartoon there. How does this cartoon from The Simpsons illustrate a difference between prescription and description? Now take a moment to think about whether you agree with the whistleblowing argument just outlined. Make a decision and jot down a few points in support of your decision on a notepad or Word document. Remember to argue what you should do rather than what you would do. Okay, we'll continue here. Let me just expand the screen there so you can see the bottom. The history of ethics can be traced back to ancient Greek philosophers. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. He put knowledge on a pedestal and believed that if we have knowledge of virtue, then we will be happy and always do the right thing. So ignorance is what obstructs justice and happiness. Aristotle, on the other hand, thought that moral experience, the actual possession and exercise of good character, is necessary to truly understand moral principles and profitably apply them. So he emphasized the need for experience and practice in order to adopt a virtuous character and apply moral principles. This is basically just to say that ethics has been around for a long time and people have been thinking and coming up with sophisticated ideas with regards to ethics ever since the ancient Greeks. In the Enlightenment, philosophers like Immanuel Kant and John Stuart Mill made monumental contributions to ethics. And ethics continues to evolve to this day as new ethical problems arise. Can you think of any new ethical problems that might have arisen in the past 30 to 40 years? Think about it carefully. Well, here are 3 areas in which ethics has evolved. And I just want to remind you, at any point, if I'm moving too quickly, please pause it, think about it, and then you can continue. The growth of industry has resulted in growth of much more pollution in all sorts of different areas. Similarly, the growth of the internet has resulted in new ethical problems arising, and new biomedical technologies like cloning, organ transplantation, and stem cell research have resulted in new ethical issues. Let's take a look at what those could be. With the growth of industry, questions like what ethical obligations do we have to future generations and developing nations to develop sustainable practices, and how should we balance environmental and economic concerns? These are 2 big questions that I'm sure you could think of many different ways to answer. With the internet, should all information be accessible to everyone, or should certain copyright, privacy, and censorship rules be maintained? What is the nature of cybercrime and cyberbullying, and how should it be prosecuted? With biomedical technology, are there ethical limitations that should be placed on medical research and treatments with regards to cloning, organ transplantation, and stem cell research? Do people always have a right to their own bodies, even after they die? And that last question is relevant to organ transplantation, because currently in Canada, you have to sign a release form. You have to give permission for hospitals and researchers to use your organs after you've died. But the question is, if other people are going to die based on you refusing that, is that the right thing for our society to do? Wait a minute. What if we're making all this stuff up? Some people have this reaction to ethics and think, ethics is just your opinion, and it doesn't really matter what all we're making up here, because it's just ultimately your opinion. If you're thinking something along these lines, never fear. This is a meta-ethical challenge, and we will certainly address this area of ethics first, so that you can feel comfortable continuing on with the study of ethics. Ethics can be divided into 3 areas. Metaethics is the study of epistemological and the metaphysical foundations of ethics. Now, epistemology and metaphysics are our previous 2 units, so you should be able to think about what that might entail. Normative ethics is the study of general criteria for right and wrong, given the existence of ethics and the foundations of ethics established by metaethics. Applied ethics is the study of specific and topical, which means current, ethical problems. All right, so now it's time to predict which area goes with which questions. Which of the 3 areas just mentioned goes with the questions, why should we be moral? Why do people act ethically at all? And are there moral facts? Which goes with, what is the difference between right and wrong? Is there a difference between moral and social norms? And which goes with, what is the right thing to do in a given situation? And how should we respond to certain moral dilemmas? Take a guess. Remember, pause it if you want a chance to think about things. There we are. Metaethics is the first one, normative ethics is the second one, and applied ethics is the third. You can see why metaethics will be a topic that we address first. Ethics terminology. Okay, for the last part of this, we're going to review some terminology in ethics that will help us understand what's going on. In philosophy, first of all, ethics and morality are usually treated as interchangeable synonymous terms. So you can put one in for the other, and they basically mean the same thing. Some sources may distinguish these terms, but we won't worry about that. Okay, we're going to treat ethics and morality as interchangeable synonymous terms. The right versus the good. In ethics, there's commonly a distinction made between right action and good consequences. Now, some believe that right actions are just exactly those that lead to good consequences. We'll talk more about that later. But others think that actions should be judged not on whether they result in good consequences, but on whether the actions themselves are right. Simply put, the right refers to ethical actions or decisions. For instance, volunteering at the site of a natural disaster is the right thing to do. The good, on the other hand, refers to ethical consequences or states of affairs. So it is a good thing that people who needed help were helped because of people volunteering at the site of the natural disaster. That's just an example. Okay, and wrong and bad are, of course, the opposite of right and good. Moral, immoral, and amoral. Moral refers to something about which one has moral obligations. Immoral refers to something that is ethically wrong, and amoral refers to something that is irrelevant to morality. So, for instance, one has a moral duty to respect the rights of others, an immoral action is a wrong action, and whether you choose to wear pants or shorts to school is usually an amoral choice. Doesn't matter. Egoism versus altruism. These terms refer to our motivations. So egoism is if I am motivated to act out of self-interest, then I am psychologically egoistic. So I'm acting out of selfishness or self-interest. Altruism, if I'm motivated to act out of selflessness, then I am psychologically altruistic. Okay. So some philosophers have tried to claim that there is no psychological altruism, no selfless good deeds. Actually, Joey from Friends represents this position in the clip below this video. Please check that out and take so he represents the psychological egoist position. But don't believe Joey right away. Other philosophers have countered with some very persuasive examples. We'll get more on that later. Okay, so legal, social, and moral norms. Moral norms are things like, obviously, don't kill, abuse, or otherwise harm other people. There may be exceptions to this rule, but generally most people agree. Okay, so we can generally understand what moral norms are. Things that are morally prohibited. Now, legal norms are different. Often, the reasoning behind a law is to stop people from acting immorally. For instance, child abuse is illegal and clearly immoral as well. However, legal norms overlap, but they are not the same thing as moral norms. Let's illustrate that. How does the law differ from morality in these three ways? There are laws prohibiting amoral actions. There are immoral actions not legally prohibited, and there are immoral laws. So when I say laws prohibiting amoral actions, it's laws about things that they're not exactly moral concerns. Okay, see if you can think of any that fit that bill. Okay, I'll provide it for you. Jaywalking, certainly. Wearing a seatbelt. These are things that in certain circumstances are very unwise, they're unsafe, but arguably they're not immoral. Illegal drug use, obviously in certain cases not a good idea, probably going to cause you a lot of harm, but is it an immoral action? People might disagree over that. Okay, so lying to your friend and infidelity. These are things that are not legally prohibited, but they're clearly wrong. It's clearly wrong to lie, and it's clearly wrong to cheat on your spouse. And finally, there are anti-gay laws, anti-democratic laws that are examples of immoral laws. Social norms, on the other hand, are just like legal norms. Social norms are arguably not the same as moral norms in that respect. Okay, And social norms could include things like fashion, public opinion, and etiquette. Okay, that's all we have for today.